Hi, so my name is Jet McClinney, and this is my presentation for the analysis on the cultivation, availability, and impact of bioethanol. And essentially, what bioethanol is that is a type of biofuel, and a biofuel can be anything that is made from raw materials that can be made in a short period of time, as compared to fossil fuels, which take a very, very long time to make and to refine. So bioethanol specifically is a substitute for petrol in vehicles that could be gasoline or diesel. It is produced through sugar fermentation and sugar-containing raw materials, and that's essentially plants. Um, Ethanol specifically is a clear, colorless liquid. It's very easily to be biodegradable. It's combustible also, and bioethanol has led to reduced environmental pollution compared to petroleum products, again, such as diesel and gasoline. So the biological source cultivation for bioethanol is mostly made from feedstocks, grown in mass quantities such as corn, wheat, and root crops. However, this is kind of an issue because these crops are also competing to be made into food or feed for either humans or livestock. Therefore, it is switched into lignocellulosic biomass as an alternative source. And what lignocellulosic biomass is essentially just any raw plant material. Lignocellulosic is renewable, non-competitive with food crops. It's harvested from crop residues, such as hardwood and soft trees, cellulose wastes, herbaceous biomass, and municipal solid waste. So there are multiple sources for lignocellulosic biomass. Um, Literally just anything that contains sugar and mostly, again, raw plant material. So this is a refining process of bioethanol. So essentially, either a lignocellulosic biomass product, including shown here, such as corn or a corn staver. Um, the process is just slightly different in either case. Overall, is relatively the same. They're both milled. If it's not a raw crop, such as corn or wheat, it's pre-treated beforehand. Um, and then it has to go through saccharification in order to get the sugar out of the plant material versus corn, which is just a food material. Then it goes through fermentation in order to create the ethanol. It's then distilled and transported. So that bioethanol was first employed in Europe, the United States in the early 1900s, but it had very high manufacturing costs versus oil. But in the 1970s, the oil crisis happened and the bioethanol production increased as it was a cheaper means of fuel. Currently today, the United States is the world's largest producer of bioethanol, and it was expected to produce 13.8 billion gallons in 2020. And previously in 2010, bioethanol accounted for 2.7% of the world's highway transportation fuel supply. Many countries, especially in Southeast Asia, such as China, intend to promote bioethanol to create a market surplus in order to reduce oil consumption, especially in those big countries that have a very, very high population density. There's lots of smog problems. The air is not very clean, mainly in China and India. And so bioethanol helps to reduce air pollution, and it also helps to kind of lower the demand on gasoline. And when compared to gasoline, once again, bioethanol can reduce carbon dioxide emissions by up to 80%. Um, so in 2018, this shows a graphic for each country and how many million gallons um, of ethanol were produced. As you can see, USA is very much still the highest competitor and the highest producer of ethanol. However, Brazil is not far behind, and other countries in Europe, and again China, are also looking to further bioethanol production. Economic impact of bioethanol is pretty significant. It creates an economic and a social impact as it requires about 17 to 20 times more workers than the production of gasoline for the same net production and energy. And this is essentially the reason why is because it needs more workers in the agricultural sector growing the necessary biomass, as that accounts for 90% of the total employment in the production of bioethanol. One of the most notable efforts to communicate bioethanol to the public was a European project, Bioethanol for Sustainable Transport, known as BEST. It had multiple efforts to communicate the use of bioethanol and the advantages of bioethanol to the public by releasing communication campaigns and studies on the possibilities and advantages of bioethanol. It also demonstrated an extensive substitution of bioethanol as compared to petrol and diesel, essentially saying that it was telling the public that bioethanol is a reliable source of fuel just as petrol and diesel. Additionally, BEST also had a goal to create infrastructure of bioethanol fueled vehicles and convenient alternatives for regular customers. Essentially, they are trying to make a cheaper alternative to gasoline and diesel through bioethanol. So, a current analysis of the situation, bioethanol can have a significant impact in efforts towards slowing climate change and lowering carbon dioxide emissions, namely as bioethanol has been shown to lower bioethanol has been shown to lower carbon dioxide emissions by 80%. However, there is not enough public awareness as compared to other renewable energy sources, namely in the United States, and not also not enough awareness in Europe and Southeast Asia. Oh, sorry, there is not enough public awareness in the United States as compared to other countries in Europe and Southeast Asia. Um, Essentially, possibly the United States government should release more public campaigns on the use of bioethanol or just other biofuel in general and provide more funding to create technical programs in trade schools. There are this can be compared to people getting their like OSHA license in order to go work in the oil field. People could also get licensed to go work in the bioethanol production field. Um, Another alternative to using biofuel more would be to lessen the imports of fossil fuels because the United States namely imports most of its fossil fuels and to import the necessary goods and biomass for bioethanol production, such as any sugar containing raw materials or lignocellulosic biomass, essentially just importing plant material. And thank you for listening.